So actually, the Democratic Socialists of America, the local chapter, is the only active endorsement in this race for anybody. We just actually screened the OT caucus today, and we're going to be screening with a couple other organizations this week because city elections last week took everybody's energy and attention over to the runoff
Right.
in December. So now that the December runoff was over, 10 days later it was Christmas holiday, New Year's holiday. So as soon as New Year's turned the corner, we had all of this inbox of questionnaires from all the organizations that we were reaching out to. So as far as endorsements go, there haven't been any in this race, and the only one that has been done this so far is our campaign and endorsement of USA.
Okay, cool. So for those of you who may not know, GLBT is a Democratic caucus here in Houston. GLBT, it's LGBT, just so you guys, know, just in case you didn't catch that in the weird acronym thing. But so they are doing screening. So at this point in the election primary process, people are still getting endorsements. So it's still early on. We're in January. So this is kind of normal in the primary process. So could we talk more about your campaign staff? So from what I've noticed, he has a very young and very diverse campaign staff, which is amazing. So can we talk about some of that and some of your work with them?
Right. I'm very proud of the campaign team that we have put together for many reasons, and especially since campaigning costs a lot of money, and we have committed volunteers, people volunteering their time, and the people believe in the mission, the vision, and the movement that we're part of at the national level, right? And talk about center and social justice, which we'll mention a little bit later. But we started off with myself talking to my partner Lauren, who's also very politically engaged and passionate, and is a graphic designer. So I also talked to several of my closest inner circle friends who I've organized with in the past about my decision to run, and at that time really just contemplating and thinking, and they supported me. So I knew that if I made the decision, if I said yes, that I would have a small circle of close people who would want to help begin that process. And within that process, our treasurer, Courtney, then, said, I'm down, let's do this. Lauren, of course, providing all the graphics and the website and the social media and the flyers. And then our interim campaign manager to start off while we began the team building process, Andrea, who I've organized in the past with. And then just like all our friends, Kay that jumped on, and Rose, mostly all women of color, Black women. And as the campaign began its first 3 months, organizing the campaign launch event, and also organizing the first volunteer meet and greet. From that moment, more people started to come onto the campaign and then say, well, we'll help out with anything we can at the time that we have, because everybody either is a full-time student or work full-time.
Yeah. Hey, real quick. So I have the mic turned up and all the stuff turned up, but people on YouTube can't hear you. Can you talk a little bit louder?
Oh, okay.
Or like be closer to the mic or something?
I mean, is this mic the one that they hear?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're hearing this mic.
Yeah, okay. So at this point, since we launched, and where we're at now is just to have a diverse group of where I met who will become our campaign manager, Jacob Castillo, who is a very passionate young man who's only 20 years old. And me and Andrea early on were paying attention to his commitment and his knowledge of just organizing and campaign strategies, because he had participated in a lot of local organizing in Houston, massive youth rallies for what ended up becoming the Parkland shooting in response to that, and also the Sunrise Movement organizing for climate action, and just him having a background in the movement school, which came off of the AOC campaign folks that put together basically like a 3-month seminar type of thing, like 3 months where they just teaching people how to run a campaign. So myself and Andrea were just organizing the campaign between us and the rest of the team, and we just noticed that Jacob was just very, helpful with all the information and what were the most important strategy points to take from that, or whatever we were addressing. And so that led me to just have that opportunity when Andrea moved to step back and just be able to take care of her own personal life and support the campaign as a more of a senior advisor. We just knew that Jacob was going to be the right person for a campaign manager, and we knew that we were doing something that probably is unconventional, which is have a 20-year-old college student be a campaign manager for a congressional office. And that was just a reflection of what we're noticing, is that the youth movement is a very educated, informed, and active movement. You see what Sunrise Movement has been doing with the national conversation on climate change. You see what the March for Our Lives movement has been doing on gun rights and action on gun violence. So now we're looking at a campaign team that is diverse, that is both diverse and just not, having women of color, Black women, but we also have young high school students and college students all putting in their energy towards a campaign. And it's just one of the biggest things I'm proud of, because we're looking at our campaign as there's no other campaign in Houston that looks like ours.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really exciting. Sorry, I talk loud, so like the audio on this, it's like, bah! Right. And then like I'm trying to get the audio, but it's crazy because I talk loud and yeah. But so what we're getting at here is that his campaign is super, super diverse. And I'm not part of any of this. He's been working a lot with the local climate groups. So it was like, how long ago was it? About a month ago, where they had the forum, where it was a whole bunch of, almost a month ago. There was a forum where there were a whole bunch of teenagers. We had a whole bunch of teenagers who went up and talked about the climate crisis and what they are doing locally. And so something that I want to bring up too, that you were talking about earlier, is how expensive it is to run a campaign. Right. It's not accessible to the working class. And part of why I wanted to interview Stevens is because he's not taking corporate donations. And that is such an integral part of what we are collectively all trying to do here. So can you talk a little bit about how, as a working class person, because you're a teacher, what sort of obstacles have you faced with the campaign?
Right. Really, when it comes to the obstacle of not having enough money, it just mostly affects like how many flyers can you have printed? How do you have access to the voter access system that people know as VAN, right? Mm-hmm. That has all the registered voters and their activity for the past couple cycles, so you can know who to target as far as like knocking on doors and even flyers and such. Like that costs $3,000 to just have access to. Not having the funds to be able to like have as much t-shirts and all the merch that you want to will give out to people. Just not having the funds to be able to have the mailers ready, so that way as we're approaching the primary day, that people could get something in the mail at least once a week for the last month, right? Like just not having enough money to be able to like spread out all the campaign information around the district. That's the biggest challenge, is because one thing that I learned running is that as soon as you file, your information is public. So all of a sudden our email and our our inbox, our actual like mail inbox, receiving a lot of like, we'll make your yard signs, we'll make your prints, you'll make your shirts, we'll make it's an industry for campaigning that's ready and waiting for you to spend money on. Is just that how do you raise those funds? And we decided a long time ago we didn't want to raise $500 donations. We didn't want to raise $1,000 donations, $2,000 donations from people who are going to be expecting favors on the back end of that. We're proud to say that we have an average donation of about $17 per donation, individual donation, right? And we've had over 150 people who have individually donated, and many of them are reoccurring. And all this is public information, so there's no point for me to try to hide it or try to like avoid talking about it, but we've raised a little bit over $5,000 since we launched.
That's not bad.
I mean, it's not bad at all. But we have people in this race, which is crowded. It's 7 total. One candidate comes from the construction business. He has raised over $40,000, but all his major donors are over $500, $1,000, and they're from real estate developers, other construction companies. We have another candidate who's raised over $30,000, but he is in the healthcare industry. He's an optometrist, and all his donors are over $500, $1,000, and they're all from the healthcare background, other optometrists. And then you see in their policy proposals, this is why they don't support a Medicare for all. This is why they don't support more radical progressive ideals, is because they're already raising the funds from the folks who they want to help maintain the careers and further themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another candidate put $50,000 of his own money to enter the race. So we have always been committed to reflecting the grassroots working class effort that people want to see in all of their political offices. We're that campaign here in Houston, and we've been reaching out people one by one. We knocked on over 5,000 doors since we started. Knocking on doors in July, collecting signatures. We then paid the $3,000 to get on the ballot. We, submitted the over 900 signatures to be able to qualify, and just being able to represent, that has been the biggest thing that we want to focus on.
Yeah, that's good. I'm sorry, y'all. So for those of you guys listening on Status Coup's app, I know the audio is good. For those of you guys listening on the YouTube, the mics are linked together, but like I'm very loud, and I know Steven's mic isn't picking it up, even though I have everything turned up.
Whole thing's turned up.
Everything's turned up, guys. So I don't know what's going on with Steven's mic, and I'm sorry. So those of you listening on YouTube, I am so sorry. But for those of you guys listening, on my end, on the back end, when Stevens is talking, all the audio levels are like in the green and yellow. So I don't know what's going on, because on the back end, I see that his audio is good. It's still in the green, though. It's not really yellow or red.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Just talk really close.
Yeah, talk really close to the mic. Talk really close to the mic, because people are leaving.
Don't leave. I want to yell in your ear for those who have.
Yeah. No, we're good. So we'll talk louder.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up, we're talking about Houston as the most progressive city in the South. So right now, Houston is very neoliberal, like incredibly neoliberal. All the Democrats here are bought and paid for, just like every other Democrat ever in the history of ever. Well, maybe not in the history of ever, but close enough. So what is your vision with making Houston a progressive city?
Well, definitely the vision for Houston being a progressive city is because of the diversity, because it has the population size now that's going to claim at some point in the near future the third largest city in the country. That is going to put it right behind like New York and Chicago, I believe, or Los Angeles, right? So I don't know, we're competing with Chicago for that third place, but you have New York, you have LA, then you have Houston. And to be able to say that we have that much people and that much diversity, because we are the most diverse city in the country, so we already have that title. Progressive looks like having policies that represent everybody, because usually that's why I've always brought back up the social justice center, because when you center social justice, then you're focusing on that diversity, you're focusing on equity, not just equality, you focus on intersectionality. And when you have that type of representation in the local offices, in the state offices, in Congress, then you're able to be a progressive city.
Mm-hmm.
And for it to be in the South, it will be a major big deal, because the South doesn't have that right now.
No.
South is still able to maintain that balance of power, more focused on the right wing, especially being here in Texas, where it's like it is the head of the Confederate neo-Nazi snake that we have to deal with. because you have these elements that exist within the Republican Party that run the state. So therefore, the city of Houston still has to deal with that obstruction from that party. But then we also have what I like to call modern day Dixiecrats, who are just Democrats by name, but they're more like corporate focused, but also they appeal to the centrist moderates who are able to like submit to the more right-leaning sides of politics.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Ow. So I was testing the audio while you were talking about that, and yours is definitely a lot lower, and mine's like super loud. I don't know why. But with that said, appealing to the moderate side is very dangerous, right? Because then we have incremental change, and incremental change is dangerous to everybody. Like, it doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it matters a lot at the intersections, but more importantly, Black and brown people are more disproportionately affected by incremental and moderate stances compared to, a normal white person. So, and Houston is largely a Black and brown city, even with all the gentrification going on. So with that said, I guess we can move on to the centering social justice as a platform.
Right.
So what does that look like?
Well, that looks like the evolution of revolutionary politics that's been going on for the past 5 years since the Black Lives Matter movement became such a widespread, active movement in the country that became, it began checking the language. It began checking like the intersections in every conversation, so people can no longer just say something that's very general, not specific, and pretty much tries to like avoid the more in-depth conversations of what's going on in these communities that have to deal with gentrification and over policing or food deserts or just lack of health care or discrimination in the workplace. All these things start to come up now in a way that you see that politicians now need to be able to speak intersectionality. So when you can't go ahead and center social justice as a platform, then we're talking about jobs. We're talking about education. We're talking about healthcare. We're talking about environmental justice. So we get to say that social justice helps address the things that people have been complaining about for years, for decades, anyways. Because these are the folks that, especially the Democratic Party, are always dependent on to vote for them, which is the Black and brown votes.
Right.
And so when you're centering them and making their vote dependent on that, understanding that centering them looks like a Green New Deal, which is going to address economic disparities, which is going to address jobs, which is going to address education, which is going to address gentrification, and be able to move forward of being off the fossil fuel oil companies' grasp on energy, go towards green energy, and create these jobs and these education platforms, and be able to just mobilize people in their own communities to save their own communities. Social justice, to me, has been the saving graces of what movement building is. It's not just about the face of like the historical moment. Did you get the first insert whatever race, gender, or sexual orientation that you want to say in this office? Like that doesn't matter anymore. It's like, are you getting actual policy out of these folks?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, we're not getting any actual policy out of anyone right now. I mean, we have Green New Deal and Medicare for All sort of brewing up there, but like, who's actually going to vote for it right now? Like, no one. So what do you think is going to like happen in the next couple of months as far as primaries go? And if everything goes well, the goal is for all across the United States for everyone to be on the same page and push these bills through. So what does that look like for you as far as like right now and looking forward?
Right. Well, I mean, right now what it looks like is many primary challenges going on right now in the country. Many of them supporting the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and student loan forgiveness and free public college. So you're going to have some victories in these races, whether they're challenging incumbents or empty seats. So you're going to have more congressmen and women going in next year inauguration who support the Green New Deal. So it's going to create a bigger coalition inside of DC for a Green New Deal. So it looks like, keep pushing on this, because the other side of it is the youth movement. A lot of these young folks who are about to cast their first ballot for, let's say Bernie Sanders, because they paid attention to him in 2016 and agreed with everything he said, but they just couldn't vote for him because they weren't 18 yet.
Yeah.
Those voters, and then you have the ones who are not 18 right now who can't wait for the next election that they can vote in, so they can push on these progressive movements. So it's a growing movement. It's going to get more and more louder as we go. It's going to be more and more effective as we go. People are going to be asking for the Green New Deal more and more in the ballot. So it's just about keep pressing on it, keep pushing on it, keep talking about it, educating people about it. So that way, hopefully within the next 4 years, we see a Congress that is now drafting and about to pass a Green New Deal bill, but hopefully sooner than that, because obviously we have a deadline given to us by scientists who say that we don't have until the end of the decade. We have
right.
move on this faster.
Yeah. So with like this climate crisis, we have climate apartheid. How have you guys been talking about climate apartheid? Because that's such a huge deal. I mean, it's like that huge deal that people don't actually know about.
Right.
So part of social justice is, centering climate. How are you guys doing that?
Well, I mean, we haven't addressed climate apartheid with those specific words.
Mm-hmm.
But we do understand that we are looking at a deadline, and the reason why we're pushing on this deadline is because we need to be ready for the major motions of climate and how it's going to affect everybody. So the key is to have communities, especially these Black and brown low-income communities, be fully equipped to be self-sustaining, with community gardens and just being able to be energy efficient, just to be able to have the jobs that provide for that, so that way they can be prepared for when the climate does something. Because at this point, it's not about, we need to just stop it all completely. We're not going to stop what the climate's going to do for the next half a century, because it's already in motion now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to let it get to the point where we cannot sustain our lives and survive the climate, survive the changes of the earth. We're going to have to be ready for major flooding. We're going to have to be ready for major wildfires. We're going to have to be ready for all these different things that happen, these events. And you see it happen like in Australia, you see it happen when it was going on Puerto Rico, you see what happens every time it rains too much here in Houston. So the key is to prepare these communities to be ready to not just survive these, but thrive through these climate events. Because climate apartheid is very simple. It's just the have-nots are the ones that are usually suffering the most when it comes to any disaster. We see that with Katrina, we see that with Hurricane Sandy, we see that with Harvey. The folks who are low income and disproportionately on the other side of income inequality, they end up being the ones that have to sacrifice their health, their lives, their homes, because there's no real foundation to sustain them and a support system for them to be able to survive through that event. So I think climate apartheid is definitely a major motivator about that, because we want to avoid having to deal with climate change in before.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. What else? What else to do? Because we pretty much covered everything that we were wanting to go through.
I mean, unless anybody has questions on the channel, we can start asking questions for it.
Yeah, I mean, they could. Do you guys have any questions that's not audio related? Because I can't fix that anymore. I've done everything I can on my end for YouTube. Okay, cool. So, well, beep, beep, beep. I'm going to turn that up. Beep.
Keep talking.
Okay, so right now, Stevens is going to help out with audio because he does do audio. And see, Stevens, it's not just that board there. It's this one over here. So you see when I'm talking to my mic, how it goes like that? Mm-hmm. On yours, it stays over here in the green. and it's connected. Like I have everything connected the way it's supposed to be. So someone on the mic on the YouTube chat was saying that maybe it's not an omni mic. They were saying like maybe talk through the side, because like even talking away, like.
Well, I just moved. Let me see if this works best, because what
all right.
happened was I wasn't centered. How about now? Does it work better now?
Oh yeah, it looks like it works better.
There you go.
Talk again.
I am talking again.
Can y'all hear him now?
Can y'all hear me now?
If you can hear him now, ask him some questions.
Ask me some questions. Yes. I'm here. I'm ready. Audio engineering school way back over a decade, almost 2 decades ago. Just ready for this moment.
So what do you mean you weren't centered?
You see that red knob right on top of like where the lights are hit? So that pans you. If you move it to the left, then it's going to move my audio to the left. So the center is going to both.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Learn something new every day. Okay.
Look, I'm here to provide solutions to problems.
Right? Provide solutions to problems. Okay. So the YouTube is still kind of like catching up.
Right.
There's like a lag. So I asked everybody if they could hear you, and they said they're still, I don't think they can see it yet.
Oh, okay.
So.
Back to this race.
Let's
talk about how this is by far the most primary opponents that Representative Sheila Jackson Lee has ever had. And 2 of them at least, well, one of them is a proud Republican running as a Democrat. And another one's a former Republican. And then another one will be more about like, hey, you look like you came up in a Republican household, but you just Democrat because, these Southern. There's a study of the political, happenings in the South, with everything from like the Southern strategy, Dixiecrats to like now, that I think is very interesting that we should dive into more because, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had that interview recently where she said that in another country, her and Biden wouldn't be in the same party, and that there needs to be a more bigger conversation about the multi-party system, right? So I feel that that's what happens a lot with these races in the primary, is that you're really seeing how the party is really fractured into a multi-party system already as it is, because it's the ideology. You cannot just make a list of things that you agree on and then disagree on and somehow still be the party, because there are fundamental ideological positions that I feel like really make it more of a multi-party system.
Right.
We saw this with the Republican Party. When they went through their motions with the Tea Party movement, you already had libertarians in there. Then you have folks who are just straight up neo-Nazis. They're all within the Republican Party. And then you have now what the Democrats are going through with the progressive wing, as they call it, right? And then you have what classic liberal, however you want to define them. You have the leftists, and then you have all these other like branches coming off of that side. So I think it's very important to understand that when you're running in a primary, you have to take a very close look at these candidates, because there are major differences. So this race has 7 total candidates. And, you have the congresswoman, and then you have 6 other people, including myself. So I think it's important to understand that right now, because of the move that happened in 2018 with AOC and Ilhan Omar, and, the Bernie Sanders effect, we have so many people now trying to fill in those gaps of new fresh faces. But then some of these fresh faces are pushing the same old ideological policies, from neoliberalism, conservatism, and then some of them are bold enough to run for a Democratic nomination even though they are clearly Republicans. I think it's important for people to understand the primary is a very important part of the race, especially in the blue county like Harris County. Like what you're doing here at this moment, the primary is really going to affect how the city moves forward. So, that's why it's kind of share that in there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So everyone's flocking over to All Real Radio to listen for the audio, because now, it's so OBS, I can see audio for both of the mics.
Right.
So, that's not the issue. OBS is picking up both mics just fine. But I don't know if anybody, you guys are aware of this, but there's been, YouTube is suppressing everything and everyone. So, people on YouTube that have switched to All Real Radio,
Right.
they're saying that you're really loud.
Oh, okay.
And no. It's good though. It's good though. And that's what like I'm trying to tell you guys is like his mic is loud, my mic is loud, and on the back end here, both mics are good. But so we're gonna blame YouTube because like YouTube is awful, and I'm using OBS, the software, and OBS is like a public software. So like everything looks fine on this end,
Right.
but then when it gets to YouTube, that's when it messes up.
That's what, we're gonna blame YouTube because YouTube's been nefarious in political happenings in the past couple of years. I saw a report about their recommended videos in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a major proponent in the anti-LGBT rhetoric that's going on in politics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so YouTube has some explaining to do.
Well, and like whenever Jordan would report on Russiagate over here, they would like put a purple screen on his face.
Purple screen.
Yeah, as he was talking, they would put a purple screen on his face. Yeah, it's pretty insane.
So thank you all for coming to All Real Radio. That's all love.
Yeah, everybody go to All Real Radio. Anyway, so we're gonna go back over to more race stuff. So we are talking about the candidates, and so from what I've been able to see with the candidates, first of all, there's not a lot of activity. Second of all, a lot of their policy platforms are like faux progressive.
Right.
As far as like, you know how Elizabeth Warren doesn't ever say Medicare for all? You know, she has like other words that she uses to like try to say Medicare for all, but it's like Orwellian doublespeak. So that's pretty much what's going on here too in this very neoliberal, very moderate sort of thing. So with that said, Stevens' policy platform includes Green New Deal, Medicare for all. What are some other aspects of your policy platform that that stand out besides Medicare for all, Green New Deal? Do you have any in mind?
Oh yeah, okay. That's my first choice. We haven't completed it yet as far as like it's ready for release, but we have a Medium account that we have released two more specific policy platforms. One was for housing as a human right in Houston. The other is women's empowerment and reproductive justice. We're wrapping up the last couple of details on the criminal justice reform and reparations. I definitely feel that reparations conversation is valid and needs to be really worked out in the public and really pushed for to become a reality. As a graduate from Texas Southern University, a history major, I learned a lot about what happened to the country after the Civil War. And one of the things that was established after the Civil War was the Freedmen's Bureau. And the Bureau was, basically funding everything from like businesses, black-owned businesses, and also funding black schools, and just providing the resources for these now liberated black people to be able to establish themselves. And that's where you get a lot of the, first couple of black elected officials late in the 1800s, right? And you also have the black towns that were starting, really thriving and building their stability. And so we've seen a form of reparations work before that it really did establish a successful result for the black community. And then that was one of the first things that was shut down after Abraham Lincoln gets assassinated, and then they take out the Union troops out of the South, and then the South is able to start doing black codes and restricting the movement of black people who were free. And then obviously the Freedmen's Bureau is dismantled,
right?
Which is the same formula that they do every time. Like, for example, the Voting Rights Act that Martin Luther King marched for, well, they gutted that. The Civil Rights Act, they didn't try to gut that. So they gut everything that has been fought for and sacrificed lives for. Just tap that light. Tap my light. Tap it. Tap it. Tap it. Tap it. Keep tapping. There you go. See? So basically, reparations is something that's happened before. It would work, and the only thing that I definitely want to see happen, because right now, currently, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has picked up on the reparations bill that was originally proposed by Senator John Conyers back in the 80s. And since the 80s, he would propose that bill every day. It was only called for a study for reparations, but he would propose it every year. Then after he retired in 2017, the bill was not proposed until this year. I'm sorry, this past year, 2019, when Congresswoman Jackson Lee brought it back up to be discussed and voted on, and now they're doing the hearings and all that. I want to see reparations bill get past the study portion to actually get into the implementation portion. I just know that there's a lot of factors that go into it, and one of those is the fact that we also have to see, because we got a presidential election year with major proposals, so we have to see what a Green New Deal and student loan forgiveness does for all the communities, right, across the board. Because when we talk about reparations, we have folks who are specific. They want specifically the people who are descendants of freed, enslaved Black people. They want them specifically to be the beneficiaries, which we understand that.
Right.
But to me, it's not about just them. It's about every single Black person who has been oppressed through Jim Crow, redlining, and also the crack epidemic. All these things came after the Civil War, came after that they were, considered slaves. And a lot of the folks who suffered from these policies weren't necessarily descendants of slaves. They might have migrated from a different country, and they're Black.
Right.
They suffered from those same practices. So that's why I feel like we have to expand this conversation. We have to see what a Green New Deal and a federal jobs guarantee does for all peoples, including Black people. Student loan forgiveness, we have to see what it does for the Black community as well, because we want to make sure that we do a measured response after all these other things are being implemented. And this sounds a lot of it sounds similar to a lot of people when they say like, oh, let's wait and see. Like, no, because all these policies, Green New Deal, federal jobs guarantee, student loan forgiveness, we need to get this done yesterday. So
yeah.
I'm trying to keep the football down the field. It's just that we want to be honest and honorable in with the policies that we've been proposing now. We want to be consistent with those, and then fill in the gaps that are left, and make it actually mean something. Because just writing a check out here to somebody like that's it. Like, no, it's structural. Because the Freedmen's Bureau was structural. It was about setting institutions and creating schools and creating trade schools and creating banks and creating all these things that help the Black community sustain itself. So reparations is something that I'm big on, that I definitely support, and I definitely like to see more people talk about. And besides that, the most progressive policy, you could pick any one of our policy points. None of the other candidates are really trying to talk about these things. They try to tap on it with we need green solutions, but they're not talking about Green New Deal. Somebody actually said Green New Deal, but it's a pragmatic approach to the Green New Deal. It's
incremental change. We keep going back to that.
I'm not afraid of saying I'm trying to push hard, I'm trying to push forward. That's our slogan. So it's we've already seen what happens when you have President Trump get in there and dismantle everything, defund everything, putting people into those departments that their job has only been to dismantle that department. I want to see what the other side looks like when you put the right people in, fully funded, and go for these bold policies, with the gas, when you're put all the way down to the gas pedal. Let's see what happens. And I'm sure that putting people to work and putting people to healthcare and education first is going to yield great results. Yeah.
So something that, like you were talking about in terms of reparations, is structural change. So often I see that people are like, we want reparations, and we need to have them. But they don't talk about structural change to go in hand with that, because what is reparations if there's still the school to prison pipeline? Right. What is reparations if there's still war on drugs? What is reparations if a Black woman can't wear her natural hair to work? Right. There's a lot of structural things that need to get changed. Redlining of neighborhoods, loans, gentrification.
Right.
Definitely a huge one, especially in the Houston area. What is reparations when we have those structural obstacles?
Right, and that's something that's why I tell people who have mentioned to me, we need to get paid. I said, well, I don't disagree with that approach because, you know, we look at like how people want to become millionaires because they win the lottery. Like the data on that is like most of them end up being bankrupt and broke. You know, maybe within the first 3 years after having won the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
So you just give people a lot of money, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to be successful and prosper. So to me, it's not just about giving people a check, like, you know, here's your money, we're good now. It's like, no, like, you wiped out communities that were set up. We're talking Rosewood, we're talking about Black Wall Street, we're talking about communities like Third Ward that was thriving at one point, but the crack epidemic actually started to cause major harm. So it's like we need structural change, and I'm not opposed to, you know, like a financial, like a check being given down, but it has to be in a package of all that. Because even like, you know, when you had the Japanese internment camps, and then Reagan finally apologized for that, and they actually gave that payment to the families and the descendants of the people that were in those internment camps.
Right.
Same thing with survivors of the Holocaust. Like, yes, there is a financial like payout that happens, but for the Black community, it's very different because they were structurally, the structure has been built to like oppress them and keep them out of having any stake in anything. That we need to create a structure that they are able to build their stake in it again, own it, run it, take care of it, and then the financial incentive of like a payout be included within that, so that way they could, like, you know, obviously you need the funds to do some of the things that you like a business or a nonprofit, whatever it is that you're trying to set up in the community. But we need to completely have a restructure it.
Well, and like the system has been generationally, so every generation there's a new obstruction of anything to people of color, to more specifically Black people. So it's really cool that you have that in your platform as far as like packaging things go. So
we should bring it back to Freedmen's Bureau.
Yeah.
And call it the Freedmen's Bureau. Because, you know, a lot of people don't know about the Freedmen's Bureau. They just didn't know that happened. Just like a lot of people don't know about Juneteenth. You know, like they don't know the significance about Juneteenth. Especially being Third Ward in Houston. So it's like, people need to understand that, you know, you bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, you make that the agency that takes care of reparations. They're first going to be like, why is it called a Freedmen's Bureau? And they're going to learn that this happened before. And that it's possible. It is not far-fetched. It is not a handout. It is what's right when it's to be done.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, goodness. Well, people are making their way to Oral Radio for the audio, but then they're watching still on the video, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, right? And see, like, usually the setup works pretty well because, like, I got this here. And this connects to the board, and anything that comes out from the board goes through here.
But my mic specifically is not.
But your mic specifically is not. Yeah, because like your mic is working on All Real Radio.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. So we were talking about how after the new year, things have been getting busier and busier. So as a working class person, are you still teaching right now?
Yes.
Okay, so you're teaching full time. Things are picking up after the primary. What does that look like for you?
I mean, it's looked like a whole lot more work to do, a lot more homework, because questionnaires are, you know, short or long, depends on who's sending it. Shout out to the AFL-CIO for being extremely thorough. They've had by far the most extensive questionnaire to fill out, which is great because it lets me know what they're looking for. But that takes time, right? We want to make sure we know what we're saying, what we're responding with, what our positions are, because, like, you know, we get questions asked, like, we want to ask that before. So, like, what do we feel about this, right? So it's been busy work doing that. We just had a fundraiser at Axelrad, so we were organizing that. And now we have a forum later on this month at UH It's going to be on decriminalizing poverty. It's going to feature myself and Audia Jones, who's running for DA, and Diana Alexander, who's running for County Commissioner's Court. And so just like preparing for that event, and then like we have more screenings to do, more interviews, because after you fill out questionnaires, then you got to schedule a date to go sit down with the board of that organization, and they'll ask you more questions, following questions, and then so what it's looked like since the turn of the new year, there's been a more packed schedule. I'm still teaching, I still got to pay the bills. So Monday to Friday, waking up at 5:30 in the morning so I can be at work and ready by 7:30. And most days I'm getting off by 4:30. Some days I have to stay a little longer, right? There's things I have to do, prepare for the next lesson next day. I'm prepping 2 different classes. And so, there's more grading involved, and I'm doing all these things. And then when I get home, I'm tired. But I'm really trying to push myself to make it to some of these meetings I have to do now in the middle of the week, because it's now crunch time and all these screening meetings, you have limited time. Our weekends is where we try to pack as much as possible, so that way I can get some sleep on Friday night, wake up Saturday, and just dedicate the whole day, the entire day for the campaign. And I'm trying to make sure I'm like, hey, listen, we got a month and a half left for this. Just push through. Like, if it's every day is a busy day, that's what you have to do, because this is what campaign looks like, campaign from a working class position.
Yeah.
But that's what it comes with the territory. The hope is this will be the only time I ever have to work a full-time job and campaign at the same time, because after this, next time will be running for re-election. This is what my job is be available, be present, go into everything. I don't have to do school prep on Monday, Friday. I have to have all my days just to work on the issues with constituents.
Right. So there have been some people in the YouTube chat, and maybe if you're listening on All Real Radio, you're not really sure how this is going to work out. But there are some people who have doubts about you being able to beat Sheila Jackson Lee.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I understand that, but I'm also somebody who believes that just because something doesn't look possible, you shouldn't try it. So this is a moment in history that we have to all respond to. Every city has a responsibility to respond to what's going on in the country, in the world as well. Whether you're talking about climate change and climate action, whether you're talking about white supremacy terrorism, whether you're talking about economic inequality, we have to respond. And the progressive movement is really the only movement focusing on responding to these issues with a radical lens and a bold agenda. And it's cool to see AOC in New York doing that, or Representative Omar in her district doing that, or Rashida Tlaib in her district doing that. But we also have to look at the city that we live in Houston. Like, are we doing that? If the answer is no, then it's like, well, somebody has to do it. So I said, to myself when I was getting about to like, well, I'm gonna do this because as an activist, I've always been somebody who likes to hold elected officials accountable and ask them the hard questions. So sometimes you realize that they learn how to just tolerate you, wait you out, not respond to you, because you have to go to work the next day and they get to just continue doing what they're doing. So the next step is to run for office with those ideas. So then they have to answer to those proposals. They have to answer to their positions. And somebody has to do it so they go on record. So somebody could say that somebody actually did do this, that Houston did have a progressive candidate. And the question then becomes is like, where was the rest of Houston to support this candidate, right? We understand that we need money to be visible because local media is not going to give us the kind of coverage that we deserve, just as a race, not just as a campaign, but as a race. 7 total candidates in one race. Sheila Jackson Lee's most contested primary in her entire career. Deserves coverage. Don't get that.
No, you guys aren't getting any coverage.
Right.
I mean, you got some with the Houston Chronicle. Was it this week? But as far as like national coverage, there hasn't been anything.
So I'm not afraid to lose a race, right? Because guess what? If I didn't run, it would have been the same result. I didn't win. But if we don't win and I ran, then in that case, we now get to say we proposed bold policies that people could have voted on when they went. My name was on that ballot. Those policies was on that ballot. So then the question becomes is how much momentum did we build? Because we built enough momentum for this primary to push it to a runoff, and we have 2 extra months to make our case to win the race.
Right.
Then we don't win it, then it really becomes how much momentum do we build to do it again? Because we've had that question asked to us by the people who have been doing these political campaigns for a long time, whether they were on campaigns or they're on these organizations get on endorsements. They're like, who are you going to again lose? Not because they're trying to test my ego or anything like that. It's like, no, because they understand the process like this. It takes 1, 2, sometimes 3 extra tries to win a race, because you have to build name recognition and momentum and support and build a network. So I get it. It is actually part of the design, is that people have had to run more than once in order to win a race.
Yeah. So like Paula Swearingen.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this case, all we're doing is we're making sure that Houston joined the call that's happened across the country since not since Bernie Sanders lost. I mean, since Trump won, but since Bernie Sanders lost. Since then, people have been saying, who's going to step up for the progressive policies that we all want? And every city needs to have a response. We wanted to be that response. We want to be that campaign that gives people the option to say that they had a progressive agenda that we could support and vote for.
Yeah.
And then we're able to grow this coalition to enough of a, energy and just being able to create the type of motion that makes people take a closer look at us when we go into a runoff, that we've accomplished our goal. Right. Yeah. Well, then when we win, we make history, and it's a whole different story.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, because so for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Paula Swearingen, like a lot of what you're saying just reminds me of her. I forget, was she in Virginia? West Virginia, thanks. She was running in West Virginia. She lost her first race because she was going against an establishment candidate. She was a working class person. There's a lot of things stacked up against her. And that's a lot of the same vibe that we're seeing now. But, she lost and she's going again. And just going again, like, people, you have to plant the seeds, right? A lot of it is just about planting seeds. So then when you're ready to do it again, it's good.
Exactly, because the truth is, people got lives and they got jobs and they got school. So this is another thing about like the participation in elections is low. Like, we don't have high percentage of people participating in voting. So when that pool is so small, and then on top of that, that pool is not being exposed to all the candidates because local media and accessibility, because people don't have the money to be able to like put their face everywhere. Mm-hmm. Then it's a real thing. Like, it takes time to build up the name recognition and the reach that will win your race. Because in this case, we're looking at last time she won a primary 2 years ago, she won it with about 34,000 votes. How are you able to reach 34,000 people to go out and vote for you when you don't have, the establishment funding you? So it takes time. Yeah. People just don't know. I'm never in any moment feel upset about people don't care, people not engaged. It's like, no, it's people are working, people are busy. We know what happens when something goes viral. People get engaged and then they show up for the thing that needs to be showed up for, right? Mm-hmm. But when people don't know that you're running, then it's not their fault. It hasn't come across the timeline, because Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Twitter ads, they cost money too. You could throw $100 at an ad for maybe 2 weeks, reach maybe an average of 2,000 people a day, and from those 2,000 people, how many people are going to want to follow, like, a comment? You know what I mean? The
conversion rates are very low.
They're very low. Mm-hmm. So it's and that's with as much funds that you can scrap together. So it takes a lot of work. So for those listening on All Real Radio right now, or those watching on YouTube, you support the campaign, you live in Houston, then don't just, walk away from this episode and be like, cool, that guy's cool. Like, no, sign up on the website, follow our social media, mm-hmm. share our information.
Yeah.
If you can. This takes one person at a time.
So here's his website. It's orozco2020.com. I have it on /Meet Stevens because you get to see his picture and his about. But it's www.orozco2020.com. And that's just a good place to learn more, to actually dive into policy, to do all the things. And then follow on social. Everything you need is there. And I very much recommend just going there, because so we talked about climate crisis, we talked about climate apartheid, we talked about reparations for Black people, and not just reparations, but having it as a package to where we can actually fix structural change. Because again, what is reparations if the prison privatization is still very rampant and targeting Black people? And then also we talked about running a campaign as a working class person. That's not easy.
It's not easy.
So you should definitely check out his website. And I think that's all we got. Do you have anything else?
I would just say, I thank everybody for listening, tuning in, for asking questions, being critical. I think that's always needed. I'm not here to be somebody who's popular and famous, because honestly, I've always shied away from having that type of attention, because I like the simple things in life, but I can't shake the sense of urgency that I've been feeling for years, and it's been growing because we're seeing what's been going on all around us. So I definitely want people to understand that what I hope to do is be a part of this revolutionizing movement that's going on in the country to save the planet, but also to build the blueprint for the rest of the country to follow on how to hold their elected officials accountable. Don't, don't idolize them. Don't turn them into celebrities. This is not who these people are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You have Hollywood and music for that.
That includes Bernie Sanders, you guys.
That includes Bernie Sanders. And just this week, I, in a very cheesy way, made a post that I support Bernie Sanders. It's not an endorsement, because I don't feel like I have endorsement power. It's just that I support Bernie Sanders. At this point, we're less than 2 months away from the primary. Who am I going to vote for? I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders, because policy-wise, he checks every box that I'm looking for him to check, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, even with him, I don't idolize him. When I saw him in Discovery Green, when he visited after the Sheila people forum at TSU, I gave him my book. The reason why is because I really want him to read about Black and brown people organizing, because he had said something like, he has trouble with communicating with Black and brown people in certain social justice spaces. Not that he doesn't have Black and brown support. He still has massive support from Black and brown people. It's just that those social justice spaces that hold people accountable with their language and how they speak on things, I'm critical about that too. But I want to hold them accountable by seeing what I can do. Hey, here's my book, read it. See what we're talking about. See how we see things. See how you can maybe adjust your tone on certain things, because it's a weak point at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's been getting better with it, because I know he's been surrounding himself with activists since he started in 2016, and maybe now they're starting to really bring up the pressure. So I feel that we need to learn as a culture, as a country, that we need to stop idolizing these elected officials, and these elected officials need to stop trying to mix up with celebrities, because that's how they do it.
Yeah.
That's how they do it. They mix up these celebrities. They go to gallows. They do this. It should be separate. Just like church and state should be separate, I feel like fame and state should be separate.
Mm.
So I say that to say I believe in term limits. I believe representatives shouldn't serve more than 6 terms. So that's 12 years. Senators probably the same, 6 terms, maybe. 6. Was that they do 6 years? So it'll be 2 terms, maybe 3 terms. I believe in restructuring the entire system, because the biggest thing is that the United States of America was not perfect to perfection. There was a process that needed to be constantly revised. And we need to revise it so that way we can avoid some of the things that have been affecting us for the past, 200 years, and really holding us back from becoming the type of country that we like to say that we are. And I believe that people need to take ownership of that, because it's not about me, it's about all of us doing that collectively, and humble ourselves and make this a reality.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that said, this is Sam Oser with Status Coup. Here is our checklist. Like this stream, join, follow us on Twitter. You can join Status Coup by statuscoup.com for low as $5 a month. And that includes behind the scenes content and also monthly chats. And for those of you listening on Status Coup, we are doing audio through All Real Radio. It's a podcast out of Third Ward, Houston. And then also there's text alerts. Text coup, C-O-U-P, to 474747 to get breaking news and live notifications. I'm still working on my live, as you can see, so you're not going to get any notifications about me being live, but you will get notifications about Jordan being live. And he has a lot of breaking news stuff coming up, especially with Flint, that he's working on. So I would just keep that in mind. So with that said, bye.